This week, we saw on display the power of the prosecutor versus the predator. Vice President Kamala Harris prosecuted her case in front of one of the biggest debate audiences in history against Donald Trump. She manipulated him, exposed him, put forward her vision to bring America forward. I want to break it down. Donald Trump is still reeling from it. I want to just talk briefly about it simply because it showcases, I think, the importance of shows like this and the power of prosecutors putting forward evidence and the reaction by Donald Trump and MAGA. Donald Trump took a pity trip to California Ranchos Palos Verdes so he could be around one of his golf courses where he held this bizarre presser. The question is, did he commit securities fraud, or could he potentially be stepping into a future securities fraud violation for the statements he made about his stock, DJT, the stock symbol for Trump Media? We'll break that down. We should also talk about the secret settlement entered into by Donald Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, for some horrific conduct that was alleged against her for potentially grooming a victim at Bedminster, befriending this victim who experienced a great deal of trauma and manipulated the victim to enter into a settlement with her assaulter. We'll break that all down and we'll talk about what we know about this secret settlement. Then I want to compare developments in New York versus Georgia in the Trump cases. So in New York, Trump was handed back-to-back losses. The highest state court in New York upheld the gag order against Donald Trump. And in the federal court system, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Donald Trump's attempt for an emergency stay or to stop the proceedings, removing the state court proceedings where he's set to be sentenced in November to federal court. In Georgia, Trump had slightly better luck. He got some of the charges against him dismissed by Judge Scott McAfee, who reached that conclusion on the grounds of the supremacy clause, basically saying that those are the types of claims that the DOJ should bring, not state prosecutors. But a number of these state claims against Donald Trump remain. We'll break this all down on Legal AF. Michael Popok, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Ben. This is a momentous time for us here as we move out of September into October. And we're going to talk about the debate a little bit from a legal political perspective. But we finally got what we were looking for in the support for Kamala Harris kind of seeping into that water table, into that water supply, but yet showing up in the polls. The big number she had to get over, which she now has, both with the Taylor Swift endorsement and just her performance on the debate stage on the one and only presidential debate, where she kicked Donald Trump's butt up and down the ABC stage for 2 full hours, and she would have gone longer had they allowed her to go longer. No one in America thinks that Donald Trump won that debate, except for potentially Donald Trump. The polling shows that at least she won by a 23-point margin. It may not be the worst debate performance I've ever seen by a presidential candidate, but I believe, but it's pretty darn close to it. 53% of America thought that Kamala Harris won the debate. 24% thought that Donald Trump did. That means that half of MAGA did not think that he won that debate. And now she's got that 5-point lead in national polling. Now, some people might be thinking, well, national polls don't matter, Popok. We vote state by state with an electoral college. Well, that's true. But pollsters and statisticians have always found, and people that do this for a living, that once you hit the 4 to 5 point mark, a high water mark in a national polling, that's a proxy for how well you'll do state by state. She was at 1 point, 1.5 points, maybe 2 points leading into the debate, and now has gotten that 2 to 3 point bump that we were expecting. And there's no going back, because Donald Trump has decided he already got beaten with one end of the stick. He doesn't want to get beaten with both ends of the stick. So despite his spin room and we don't need another debate, he's apparently not going to do another debate, and that is advantage Kamala Harris, because where she is making effectively her closing argument on a daily basis, as only a former prosecutor can do. And as she closes the deal with the American people, to explain who she is. She's done that already. Biography is established. Chops to be commander-in-chief and Madam President, established. Now she's filling in and backfilling policy, local interviews on local television with local papers and doing the interviews and doing all the hard things and policy papers and doing all those things while Donald Trump thinks he's going to be able to mean tweet his way to the White House with Laura Loomer and other alt-right podcasters as his main campaign advisors. Where is his professional campaign advisors? He's his own campaign director. He takes direction from Laura Loomer, an election denier, 9/11 denier, who uses racist tropes on a regular basis, who gave him the cat and dog being eaten, pet being eaten thing that he latched onto 26 minutes into the debate. This is a gassed campaign. He's quietly quitting. He didn't go back out on the campaign trail the way that Kamala Harris has with the wave of enthusiasm. He hasn't campaigned at all, and he's not going to be able to win this election.
You said that may not have been the worst, but it was up there on the worst debates you've ever seen. I assume the worst one you're talking about is the 1840 debate between William Henry Harrison and Martin Van Buren, when, of course, William Henry Harrison famously talked about eating the bison testicles. That was definitely the number one worst debate. You forget about that one right there. I'm, of course, making that up. That didn't actually happen in the debate. But this was a pretty poor debate. Let me tell you what Donald Trump is saying, though. This was the worst debate, clearly, Popok. I mean, it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. What could possibly be worse than a guy? They're eating your cat. They're eating your dogs. And Donald Trump's behavior after that, just doubling and tripling down on showing how disqualifying anything he does should be towards any position at all. Forget the presidency. Here's what he posted earlier in the morning. ABC fake news has been completely discredited and is now under investigation. Did they give Comrade Kamala the questions? It was 3-on-1, but they were mentally challenged people against one person of extraordinary genius. It wasn't even close, as is now reflected in the polls. I won the debate. I mean, he's losing in all of the polls, and he's actually losing his mind right now. There were more posts like that. He posted, people are saying that Comrade Kamala Harris had the questions from fake news ABC. I would say it is very likely. And then you have all of the people closest to him, like Laura Loomer, making posts like this. Interesting choice of earrings tonight. And then trying to state that Vice President Kamala Harris was wearing an earpiece in her earrings, giving her the questions in advance. Or another big MAGA influencer, Matt Wallace, saying, inside report, ABC allegedly set up distractive lighting aimed at Trump's podium to make him look left to right repeatedly during the debate and artificially increase his heartbeat. I mean, you can't, this is real stuff that they're saying, Popok. And by the way, Donald Trump is saying it. This is Donald Trump last night when he was speaking at an important swing state. He's speaking in Nevada. Here he is in Las Vegas, and he's like, yeah, I think she got the questions in her ear. He's like citing this stuff. Here, play this clip.
Story with that. Did she get the questions? You think? So I hear she got the questions, and I also heard she had something in the ear, a little something in the ear. No, Kamala, do this. Say it this way, Kamala. Okay, be quiet. Too many people watching.
You know, if you actually look at the data, though, who got the last word in the September 10th, 2024 debate, if you want to know, like, actually the facts, Donald Trump got more of the first word, and he got all of the last word in every question. And I remember there were some moments where he would just interject. They would put his mic back on, which frankly was fine because it showed how psychotic he was. So I wasn't going to keep on talking. You know what I mean? The law of holes, you know, you're supposed to stop digging, but Donald Trump digs further. But he got the first word and the last word, all of the last words, and he got more of the first words and all of the last words. And then sometimes, like, Vice President Kamala Harris would go like, hey, can I just try to respond to that? It's false. And like they wouldn't have her do it. Then they would move on to the next question where he would get the last word. But whatever, he lost the debate. And the reason why I want to bring this up in the legal show, it's the intersection of law and politics, though, is because you and I have always said, you know, in a court of law, admissible evidence is what's required. You can't have hearsay on top of hearsay, or hearsays you generally excluded except in rare exceptions. The way the MAGA and Republicans run political campaigns, it's not just hearsay, but it's insane hearsay over and over again, spreading false propaganda to divide us. And even when we see something where if a jury was selected to actually evaluate that debate as who won, who lost, and you were to pick the right jury that was not propagandized, you would have to select Vice President Kamala Harris. And if you say that's not the case, then you're just not being honest. There's a real deep issue. You don't believe the sky is blue, then you believe the sky is actually green. And we have to exist in a world of objective facts. And when you and I set out to create this show, it was to cut through the crap and bring people objective facts. And that's really why I just wanted to highlight that at the beginning of the show.
I think it's important. We'd be remiss if we didn't lead with a debate, which may have been the most pivotal, game-changing moment in the entire campaign, other than Kamala Harris becoming the new nominee. Just on a couple of your points there, I just want to touch on before we move on to our next segment. The Times did a good survey today of words and phrases that Donald Trump has latched onto. And in this list, starting on July 22nd through September 5th, he said the words "Comrade Kamala Harris" or something like that about 150 times, day after day after day. Comrade Kamala, Comrade Kamala, Kamala, over and over and over and over and over again, trying to get it as an earworm into people's minds. Speaking of earworms, I'm sorry, I don't usually laugh out loud, although I like to on this show. I had to in a couple of your things where there are now the Republican MAGA are so pathetic that they think lighting is the reason that Donald Trump lost. And I want to address the Tiffany earrings things. And I find a level of projection here that even for Donald Trump is laughable. There has been a rumor for a long, long time, and it's been in the press, that Melania Trump has had a long-time affair with the head of security at Tiffany's, the building directly adjacent to Trump Tower. If you go walking down Fifth Avenue on 57th and 5th, there's Tiffany's headquarters, flagship store, and there's Trump Tower. And there's long been a rumor, his name's in the paper, I'm not going to mention it, that she has had an affair with him. I find that to be the height of laughable. I'll tell you who knows the Tiffany earring collection really, really well is Melania and Donald Trump. However, what the vice president was wearing in her ears is a pair of Tiffany hardware pearl earrings. How do I know? My wife has the identical pair, which I bought her when we were courting 4 years ago. If you look at prior pictures, Kamala Harris has worn the Tiffany pearl earrings with a matching necklace at event after event after event, including at the Juneteenth event this year, where she sat with the same earrings. It's not an earpiece. Anyone, and Laura Loomer knows it, she's just creating disinformation campaigns where she pulled up a catalog photo of a German company's earpiece Bluetooth thing. And I'll give credit to the German company, because they saw an opportunity that they didn't want to miss, where people were talking about their product. And my favorite part was they didn't say that Kamala Harris was wearing their product. They couldn't say that. They said, it's interesting that this issue has come up about whether and we're going to be making, this was directed to Donald Trump, we're going to be making a male earpiece so that he can wear, I guess, in the next debate. That's one. Secondly, from a lawyer advocate, you and I stand on our feet and do hot takes and first takes of openings and closings and cross examinations for a living. I've been doing it for 32 years, and you for a long time as well. If anybody watching that debate thought that the questions topics were being given to Kamala Harris, a fourth grader would have been able before that debate to say that these were going to be the topics: the pullout in Afghanistan, the border crisis, the issue of reproductive rights for women, economic policy and trade tariffs, and Ukraine. And okay, the rest of the stuff that came up had nothing to do with, I assure, for those that didn't get a chance to watch it, I assure the American people and globally of the rest of our audience, there was not a question where the natural answer to that question was eating pets and cats because of Democratic policy. That came out of the weird stew of Donald Trump's brain. There was not a question where Donald Trump would naturally answer by embracing dictators as a fanboy moment and a bromance with Viktor Orban of Hungary and Putin. and blow kisses to both of them during the debate. That was not a question that was asked. That was Donald Trump getting, as you have there, the last word, and those last words being what this shows you how unwell, demented, and unhinged he is. We now know why, speaking of Laura Loomer, who's an election denier, a 9/11 denier, who said that she doesn't want Kamala Harris in the White House because she thinks it'll smell like curry. Okay, so she's racist, misogynist, and all of that. She was also on the plane to the debate with Donald Trump. She was part of his debate prep. She went with him, despite being a 9/11 denier, saying it was an inside job. She went with him to Pennsylvania for the 9/11 ceremony. Okay, and then when that came out, and Donald Trump was challenged, he said, well, Laura Loomer, I can't control Laura Loomer. She's her own person. She has been, much to the chagrin of the professionals on Donald Trump's team, whoever they are, she has become a leading campaign advisor for Donald Trump. And lastly, Ben, when Trump decided in an unprecedented way, so many unprecedented things with Donald Trump and unprecedented things with Donald Trump, to go into his own spin room after the debate, which has never been happened, which shows you he knows he lost. He went in to do his own spin with the media. Okay, Laura Loomer was with him, and alongside, in tweeting out and social media posting in real time, was a group of alt-right podcasters and social media people like DC Drano and Joe Prosobiec, he of Pizzagate fame, who were all on the Trump campaign payroll, who were responding in real time to the debate, trying to influence people's perceptions of it. That's who Donald Trump has gotten into bed with, who he thinks is going to help win his election. And how did that go for you, Donald? You lost by mainly 23 points to overwhelmingly by Kamala Harris.
In the legal cases, when a judge's wife would be attacked, a la Justice Engoron in the civil fraud cases, where a judge's daughter would be attacked, a la Justice Merchan in the criminal case, the person who would start the rumor, and it would be the same type of rumor that the family member of the judge created a Twitter account and were posting things about Donald Trump, and then the Twitter account mysteriously then shut down. That rumor always originated from Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer would put out those statements. Then she would say things about the family members like, oh, evil bitch, evil this, evil that. Then Donald Trump would latch onto it because Loomer would package it as a report. It would go through the right-wing kind of ecosystem. And then Donald Trump would say, look, there are reports that the judge's daughter is posting pictures of me behind prison cells. There's the wife posted that she hates me. And all of that stuff was false. And if you recall some of our earlier reporting at Legal AF and the Midas Touch Network, the PR person for the court system would actually have to step in and issue statements because of the death threats that Loomer would cause to the family members, saying these people don't even have Twitter accounts, yet alone that is not their account, and they don't have Twitter accounts, and this isn't theirs. And so Laura Loomer would actually originate that. Then Donald Trump, for the past several months, we've been reporting on Loomer. I know the corporate media is just catching up to this, but we've been talking about Laura Loomer now for over a year, I would say, and our reporting really picked up on it around 6 months ago with these threats as the judges. And then Donald Trump would say at a lot of his events in the past, you don't want to be Loomered, she's going to Loomer you. And those were threats directed at judges and his enemies. Being Loomered is she originates the conspiracy. That's laundered through him as a report. He has plausible deniability, although it shouldn't be plausible. Perhaps to the corporate media it is. And then he goes and attacks people on that basis, and then they engage in these then his followers engage in the stochastic terrorism against him. So I want to set this up though, and then get your take on it, Popok. So Donald Trump stock, Trump media, I want to pivot to that topic. Crashing over the past few weeks. It was down 15 points, then kind of was right around that $16.24 mark. It was going down 12% every day. The company itself is losing hundreds of millions of dollars. I managed to get my hands on the original investors deck, as well, of Trump Media, which showed its projections, like $850 million in revenue projected for 2024. It's going to be lucky, in my opinion, if it clears about $4 million in revenue. What its revenue projections look closer to is actually its losses. But also, as we know, and people astutely point out, money just doesn't get lost. It doesn't like disappear. Like it goes somewhere. So where is that money going when we say the company loses $300 million, $400 million? Where is that actually going to? And so you should check out the report we did on the investors deck, because that we really went into the weeds there. But then all of a sudden yesterday, the stock went up 17% out of nowhere to $18.85. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Donald Trump gave a speech. I'm going to show you the speech that he gave at his property in Ranchos Palos Verdes, where he made comments to move the market, to pump the market on his stock. And guess what? It pumped for that period of time. There was all of this suspicious trading going on. And so NASDAQ actually had to stop the trading of this. NASDAQ had to stop the trading of the stock because of which it does from time to time, and it has the right to do with all of the stocks that trade on NASDAQ when there's suspicious trading, to avoid securities fraud taking place. And then Donald Trump made a post. Why is NASDAQ halting the sale of DGT? What right do they have to do this? Well, I want to get into that. I want to get into more, but we got to take our first quick break of the show. It's an exciting show. We're covering a lot of stuff. We're going to cover Trump lawyer Alina Habba's secret settlement, what's going on in New York and Georgia. But let's take that first break, Michael Popak.
The dreaded wall of wine. No, it's not a long-lost House of Dragons episode. It's that feeling you get and your eyes glazed over when you see rows and rows of random bottles of red and white wine at your local grocery or liquor store. I've stopped wasting my time acting like I know what I'm doing in front of the dreaded wall of wine. That's why I love our next sponsor, Naked Wines. Naked Wines is a subscription service that directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers, so you can get award-winning wine delivered straight to your door. I just made an amazing hearty Italian dinner, yes, Popak cooks, and paired it with a Big Red, a Matt Parish Reserve 2021 Napa Valley Cabernet from Naked Wines. Not just delicious, life-altering. Naked Wines believes that great wine is an experience, and they're all about helping you connect with your friends, family, and community over a shared bottle of wine. Turn off the noise of the outside world and uncork a bottle to celebrate the little joys in life. Now that I discovered it, I can't stop talking about Naked Wines. The wine is so good, and I love supporting independent winemakers. Every bottle has a great story behind it, and I love sharing that authentic story about winemakers I would not have learned about without Naked Wines, and supporting these winemakers when I bring a bottle to a friend's house or have my foodie friends over for dinner. Naked Wines has been around for over 15 years and funds over 90 independent winemakers around the world. And don't forget, you can pause or cancel at any time. So just because you've got a trip coming up doesn't mean you can't enjoy Naked Wines before or after that much needed vacation. So join the Naked Wines community and head to nakedwines.com/legalaf for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. That's nakedwines.com/legalaf for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is, until I found ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Now look, I won't lie. I was a bit on the fence about pre-alcohol initially. But then, while hanging out with my fantasy football draft crew over at our favorite Jersey Shore sports bar, I gave it a shot. And believe me, it's the real deal. I spent the entire next day doing all my favorite things with my family, including a long hike on our favorite trail. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol, and I wondered what it was actually like. But now that I've tried it, I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/legalaf to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LegalAF at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/legalaf and use the code legalaf at checkout for 15% off. AI may be the most important computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber 8x8 and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/legalaf. That's oracle.com/legalaf. oracle.com/legalaf.
A lot of sponsors, but that's a good thing. That means they are helping build this independent media platform. Let's keep growing together. We take a long time to vet our sponsors. Popak tries all of the product. We utilize the services. Jordy has us join the calls with the companies or their reps. It's actually a pretty exhaustive process behind the scenes. And the discount codes are in the description below. It's one of the ways you can help grow this platform. The other way, of course, is through patreon.com/legalaf, patreon.com/legalaf. Go and check that out. Before the break, I wanted to show a video of Donald Trump's speech in Ranchos Palos Verdes. Let's show that video right now. Let's play it.
Media shares are down about 75% from their peak in March. Your lockdown provision ends soon. Will you sell your shares?
No, I'm not selling. No, I love it. I mean, I use it as a method of getting out my word. When it opened, it went way high, but then the SEC gave us nothing but problems. We had to go through a long process with the SEC. But people think that I'm leaving. That's why they're down, because if I leave, it's different if I leave. But I'm not leaving. I love it. I think it's great. Mechanically, it works the best. And again, I'm friendly with Elon, and Elon would love me to come over to X, but I just, I have close to 100 million people on X. I had 230 million people on X, and then they shut me down, and I said, I'm not going to let that happen again. You know that. I had hundreds of millions of people on X and Facebook and Instagram, I think more than anybody. Zuckerberg told me at the White House, he said, congratulations, you're #1 on Facebook. There's a number.
So Michael Popak, he makes that statement, and then he, in typical Trumpian fashion, starts attacking the NASDAQ as well because of the suspicious trading that followed him making those statements. Then he goes, why is NASDAQ halting the sale of DJT? What right do they have to do this? They have done it twice today. What's going on? Are they taking orders from the SEC, which for political reasons delayed us for an inordinate amount of time, therefore hurting the stock very badly? I'm going to hold NASDAQ and maybe the SEC liable for doing what they are doing. If they do it again, we will move the stock to the New York Stock Exchange. It is my intention to own this stock for a long period of time. In my opinion, it is the real voice of America, but it definitely is my voice, and it will be for a long time to come. The interesting thing too, where he's standing in Ranchos Palos Verdes at that golf course, he also sued the city of Ranchos Palos Verdes for $100 million before. So if you just talk about what we've discussed today, him losing the debate just so far in the first 30 minutes of show, him losing the debate, blaming it on earpieces and distracting light bulbs and 3-on-1. He's giving a press conference in a city that he sued for $100 million. He's talking about his stocks in ways, as you'll describe, that you're not really allowed to talk about stocks in publicly traded companies like that, then threatening to sue the NASDAQ and the SEC, and then whining about this. This is all he brings, right? This is all. You see a pattern here, folks? Popok.
Yeah. So first, personal point of privilege. You and I know that location really well for Ranchos Palos Verdes, because back in October, you and I and our lovely wives had dinner together, not there, but at a resort that was near there. And I know that because I had to do a U-turn in front of that Trump exact spot where he was given that speech from. So I wrote that down. I was like, oh shit, it's right where we were. Let's talk about the SEC thing, because he's completely addled. And let's talk about the pumping and dumping aspect of it. I checked because I'd done a hot take on this a week ago to see, whenever you have you're a founding member and you have a right to sell stock and a lockup period, which is the limitation that you have to sell your stock. It could be as short as 30 days. It could be as long as a year or more. For Donald Trump, he couldn't sell his stock for 6 months. He owns 115 million shares of the stock in his company. I think he owns 57% of his company shares. And when in March it was trading at $60 plus, we were saying, holy shit, this guy's going to be like a $6 billionaire off a company that, as you said, has a burn rate of millions and millions of dollars a month that they're not recovering. No business model to speak of. They don't have advertisers. I always joke that if you don't like our advertisers, go to Truth Social. There are no advertisers. There's no business being generated there. And their only asset, Donald Trump, as you even saw in that own press conference, inadvertently, with a slip of a tongue, says and acknowledges that he is the only asset that company has, and yet there's no exclusivity. He's willing to go over with his buddy Elon Musk and go over back to X, which is why in all the securities filings, they say that the entire brand of the company is based on an 80-year-old, soon-to-be two-time loser for president, 34 felony count convicted guy. That's a problem, and that's why it doesn't make any money. Doesn't make any money, but you're right, as you pointed out, the money's going somewhere, and it's going into the pockets of related entities and affiliates of Donald Trump and friends of Donald Trump and people that were early investors of Donald Trump. People are making money. It's just not Truth Social or the stockholders. So now the stock, as I've done, you and I both have done hot takes pretty regularly on this. I've got a Wall Street background. I worked as in-house counsel for a large Wall Street company. Won't name it. I'll just leave it at that. And here's what happens. Lockup period is over. Before the lockup period is over, which is ending on the 19th of September, right around the corner, Donald Trump had to file what's called a Form 4. He has to tell the market in advance what his intentions are so that they're not shocked on the 19th by 115 million shares flooding the market. That stock went from $62 or $64 in March. It's now down almost 80%, and it is hurtling towards its original starting price of $10 a unit. It's now at $16 or $17. I mean, that's an 80% drop. That's a 50% drop just since the debate. There's a 46% drop in the stock price since the debate. There was a 20 or 30% drop in pre-market trading before the market even opened, just incorporating what the market watched in the debate, which was a loser in Donald Trump, and Wall Street hates a loser. They also can smell one a mile away, brokers and traders, and they were like, sell as soon as the debate was over, and the pre-market trading crashed, and it didn't really recover. Now, Donald Trump's asked at the press conference, talk about knowing a question in advance. I know who knew a question in advance. It was the Newsmax press conference, and Donald Trump planted, obviously, a question to a reporter to ask him about the stock price and about whether he was going to be selling or not. Donald Trump did not file the Form 4. I looked before because I wanted to do an update on the hot take in the hot take world. He didn't do it. Now, I laid out 3 paths for Donald Trump at or about the time of his pump and dump when he dumps his stock. Because now, even though it's down considerably because he has 115 million shares, it's still to him worth like $2 billion. So it's gone down $4 billion. But even if it dropped to $10 a share, it'd still be $1 billion if he sold all of his shares. Now, if he sold all of his shares into the market, he would crush that stock, and he'd still make money, but everybody else would be crushed. That's where the securities fraud and class action suits that you referred to come from. So since he's not going to be selling, we're now down to the other two things, and really one in particular that I think Donald Trump is going to do because he needs the money. I mean, you and I have with biting our tongue and a hole in our cheek have done various hot takes about the flea market that is Donald Trump's business model. Bibles and sneakers and NFTs and trading cards and memoir. It's just he's running out of T-shirts and suits off his back. He's running out of stuff to sell. And he's not making any new deals. That has been one of the underreported, not on the Midas Touch Network or Legal AF, but it's been an underreported fact that since the financial monitor has been put in place over Donald Trump and his business affairs for the last 2 years in the New York fraud case, who watches like a hawk everything that he does, he hasn't made any new deals. Other than abroad in Dubai and Oman, he's not making any new money in America. He hasn't built a new building. He really doesn't build buildings anyway. He hasn't put his name on any new buildings. He's living off of old dollars, and those are drying up. And there's a lot of mouths to feed over there in the Trump world. You got Melania, you got Ivanka, you got, Don Jr. and Eric. It's a lot of, and the other one, you got a lot of mouths, a lot of families that have to rely on this family office. So he's got to sell. He's got to get money, or he's got to monetize, or what we say hypothecate off of his stock portfolio, because he's going to end up paying over $500 million and running with interest to New York State and the people of New York State once that appeal is done. And he owes $100 million running with interest at this point to E. Jean Carroll. And then he's got other civil suits against him for other fraud that he's committed. So we know from how hard it was for him to even find somebody to post a bond for him, how in shambles his finances are. So he needs the money. So I think this is a long-winded way of saying he's going to get a loan. If he gets a loan against his stock, okay, at an exorbitant interest rate, he might be able to get $500 million. If I had to make a prediction, he's going to get a $300 to $500 million loan from some consortium, some syndication of Wall Street types that are also supporting his campaign. You can look it up. And are in that business, who are going to put together a group. It's going to be a Trump Wall Street bailout, one that he was never in favor of for America or the workers of America or the unions of America. He didn't care about the auto manufacturers or the unions there. He didn't care about bailing out and saving America's economy. But we're going to watch a Trump bailout in the form of a giant loan. The loan will not be seen by Wall Street. It won't hammer the stock price because. It could in the future, but it won't immediately. For him, the question that was never asked, because he didn't plant this question, it's not helpful to him, but should have been asked by the media at that press conference is, are you going to monetize your financial stake in any way, including in a giant loan that you'll have to disclose to the people? And then what is that? They just let him get away with all these platitudes and, I think it's a great place to be and we're, whatever. But they should have asked him the more insightful question, which is, are you loaning against it? Who's the consortium that's going to be loaning you? Are you getting a bailout, Mr. Trump? And are you using your stock as assets for a future loan and leveraged against your stock position? That's the question that wasn't asked, but that we asked here on Legal AF.
And that's really the whole debate about taxing unrealized capital gains over $100 million, where if you can pump up a stock and then take out a loan against it and then not be taxed on that, should there be some sort of surgical way of doing it? And again, that's why Vice President Kamala Harris's plan is over $100 million. And I think what she's looking at there are the people who get loans against unrealized capital gains, like Elon Musk's, who use their stock as the collateral to take out loans and then to avoid tax consequences for that entire transaction, where the average American, the hardworking American, would be taxed for all of the dollars that come in. And then there's that disparity, thus increasing the wage gap. I got to fact check you, though, Michael Popak, and I'm sorry to do this in front of such a big audience, but there are some sponsors on Legal AF. There are some sponsors. There's a lot of sponsors on Legal AF. I see. For me mocking you and doing the joke, that's what I get. There are some sponsors on Trump Media.
Who are they, Ben?
Non-Truth Social. They are the Assassination Edition whiskey glass with Trump's image on it. They are the Trump Defiant Fist coin that you can get, Assassination Edition coin. There's the Trump mugshot coin that advertises. And then, of course, they advertise the foreign mail-order brides on Trump Media. I'm not making this up. Those are actually basically all of the ads.
And corrected.
You stand corrected. That is the business model that the leader of the Republican Party has built out. I want to show this clip, though. This is, as we pivot to the next topic, Alina Habba. Alina Habba has gone around on her own pity tour, bragging about being sanctioned and losing cases. And she's, a surrogate for Trump. I'm not even sure if she does legal. She steps in and does legal cases. She always loses. She entered into a secret settlement this week, but I just want to share these clips with you first. The first clip I want to show you is Alina Habba from the Turning Point event that she did fairly recently, where she brags about getting sanctioned over $1 million in one of the cases where she represented Donald Trump. Let's play this clip.
That got assigned to a Clinton-appointed judge. And what do you think happened? Nobody's heard of the case, right? It's because it's gone. I never met the judge. I never walked into the courtroom. There were probably 50 lawyers representing all of the radical left. Clinton's lawyers, Mook's lawyers, and the list goes on and on and on. 1 month. It got dismissed, and me and President Trump got sanctioned $1 million for going against crooked Hillary. You didn't know that, did you? Fake news, folks. Fake news. They won't report it. But guess what? We paid that million, and we're going to keep on fighting.
First off, we reported it. Frankly, everybody reported the sanctions. Is she saying she wants more people to report on? I wish corporate media actually reported more on the sanctions, because they tend to focus a lot more on the filings of the lawsuits than the dismissals, which is what Trump counts on them to do. But, is this a serious lawyer, Alina Habba? Do serious lawyers walk around? Could you imagine if I walked around when I was a practicing lawyer and a litigator with my client's face and on my hat with giving the middle finger, and I would just walk around like this? This is what Alina Habba walks around in, and takes selfie photos of herself with Donald Trump giving the middle finger. And then she goes around, now she's like a Trump surrogate too, and she cuts all these ads for Trump, like this one right here.
So anybody that knows me, Alina Habba, senior advisor to the Trump campaign, but let's be honest, I also care a lot about my fit check.
Oh,
my
Lord.
fit check. She cares a lot about her fit check. And again, why we do this show.
Remind me again.
While the corporate media wants to both sides this, I think it is really important for America and the world just to hear it from people who practice law, or people who, who follow these things. That's not normal. And when and people are like watching corporate media, they're like, why are you normalizing it? That's not normal behavior. And as we predicted, Alina Habba was going to get in a lot of trouble. She's been sanctioned court to court, not because they're liberal judges, but because she's pleading things without facts. When she does her cases, she doesn't know how to introduce evidence. So I want to talk about the secret settlement that she engaged in, but we got to take our last quick break of the show. Let's do it.
Traditional bed sheets, they can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses, and it's just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning, antibacterial bedding, such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo, LegalAF, at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Most clothes are uncomfortable or too tight, or never actually the size you really are, not to mention the annoyance of trying to put a good outfit together. Everyone wants to dress their best and look good at all times because, frankly, it's a confidence booster. I regularly wear Rhone when I do the podcast or on Hot Takes. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the Commuter Collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, 1/4 zips, and polos. Rhone's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way. From your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. Rhone has truly become my favorite clothes. We're on the move a lot. Whether it's jumping from meeting to meeting or catching a flight or a dinner out, the Rhone Commuter Collection has never let me down. Even after I wear it all day, I still feel super fresh because of that Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. Head to Rhone.com/legalaf and use promo code LegalAF to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/legalaf and use code LegalAF. It's time to find your corner office. Have you ever felt uneasy leaving your home, wondering if everything will be safe while you're away? I know I have. And after some research, I found SimpliSafe. I've loved having SimpliSafe protect my home. And with a new baby we need to protect, the added security exceeded all expectations. What makes SimpliSafe stand out? With fast Protect monitoring and live guard protection, SimpliSafe agents can act within 5 seconds of receiving your alarm and can even see and speak to intruders to stop them in their tracks. You'll never be locked into a long-term contract, and pricing is transparent and affordable at less than $1 a day with no hidden fees ever. SimpliSafe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years running and offers the best customer service in home security according to Newsweek. It's easy to install and activate your SimpliSafe system in less than an hour. Or choose a professional installation to have a pro do it for you. Protect your home with 50% off a new SimpliSafe system. plus a free indoor security camera when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/legalaf. That's simplysafe.com/legalaf. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
A lot of sponsors today, but that is a good thing. It means the show is growing. It allows us to continue to build our infrastructure and our staff. And I'll just say this, of course, that big Taylor Swift endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris after the debate, who broke the childless cat lady story about J.D. Vance? The Midas Touch Network, our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, who's been focused on the Laura Loomer connections since day one. Ron Filipkowski, Midas Touch Network, focusing on building out our editorial team and doing this type of research, and also pushing the corporate media to focus on these important issues is a major priority of ours. So continuing to grow is important, and I think you see the results for yourself. You see the expansion of the show Legal AF with all of our great correspondents. Michael Popok, where we last left off, I was showing those clips of Alina Habba. But she got into some big trouble in Bedminster. I think it is a sign of more things to come for her. I mean, she got out of this one, entered into a secret settlement. But in my opinion, this is going to be the kind of the tip of the iceberg over the next several years, if and when Donald Trump loses, for the Alina Habba story, which we'll be covering here. Tell us about the secret settlement. What do we know about it?
Yeah, this was case number one. It's hard to believe that Alina Habba's only been in the public eye with Donald Trump since 2021. It seems so much longer than that. It's like when you're in the dentist chair for root canal and it won't ever end. So Alina Habba's only been around that long. This was her first case that she ever handled for Donald Trump, her first matter she ever handled for Donald Trump, that combined with something that she handled relating to an apprentice contestant, Summer Zervos, who sued Donald Trump for sex harassment, and she got that case dismissed or settled. And that was enough to launch her career with Donald Trump. She is single-handedly responsible for more civil and criminal case losses for Donald Trump than any other attorney in American history. I mean, I can say that safely. She was the lawyer for every major criminal case until she was replaced. She was the lawyer for all the losses, including at the start of the Attorney General case. She was the lawyer for Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll case, in both of them, until she got sidelined and kicked upstairs as whatever she is, a floating head spokesperson. Case number one that put her on the map, because she started as, I'm not making this up, folks, a parking garage lawyer representing parking lots. She's not a litigator. She practiced what you and I sometimes refer to as door law, which means you do anything that comes in the door. And she did that in a little tiny office in Bedminster, New Jersey, right off of where the golf course was. And she was a member of the club, the Bedminster golf course that Trump owns. And she was dying to find a way to get into his inner circle and get noticed and to get hired by him. And she had her opportunity with Alice Bianco. Alice Bianco was a 21-year-old server at Bedminster who was horribly, along with others there, horribly sexually abused in a sexually hostile work environment by a food and beverage manager, making the club and therefore Donald Trump responsible for his actions. Alina Habba found out about it. How did she find out about it? She found out about it from Donald Trump. And she decided to, through false pretenses, this is all in the lawsuit that was filed in New Jersey Superior Court in front of Judge Ray. She, according to the allegations of the lawsuit, Alina Habba groomed, those are the words from the complaint, Alice Bianco to make her believe that she was her best friend, that not her lawyer, but her best friend, a person she could count on for advice. They met at her law office. She had Alice Bianco fire her then existing lawyer, leaving her defenseless, leaving her without any counsel at all, as she was basically negotiating with Donald Trump's lawyer or wannabe lawyer in the form of Alina Habba. Alina Habba wanted to desperately deliver this settlement and this resolution to Donald Trump in order for him to curry favor with him and to get on his legal team. And that's what happened. Except She forced Alice Bianco, according to the complaint, to settle at a lowball number. She took $15,000 to settle, probably many multiples less than she was entitled to. She fired her other lawyers. She settled with Alina Habba. She believed Alina Habba was her lawyer in violation of a series of bar rules in every state, including in New Jersey. So for those that are thinking, isn't this unethical that you act like you're the lawyer for the plaintiff when you're really working for the defendant? Yes, that's that's called, you have to have candor to your client and to the tribunal. You're not allowed to do that and to defraud your client. And then Alice Bianco knew she was had when she tried to get some further advice from Alina Habba about the tax consequences of the payment. And she said, well, I don't represent you. I have a conflict. I can't represent you, meaning I represent Trump. And Alice said, what are you talking about? You've always represented me. We met in the parking lot in our gym clothes. We talked about the case all again in the complaint. This was so concerning to Judge Ray, the judge in New Jersey, and you and I reported on this back in December, that in handwriting at the bottom of his order about the case, he wrote, if I get credible evidence that Alina Habba, or a lawyer in this case, has committed these ethical violations that are alleged in the complaint, I'm making a referral to the bar in New Jersey. Alina Habba also got thrown under the bus in the same case by the Trump Organization, because they, in the filing and settling their case, because they settled, but when they settled, Trump settled, he didn't get a release. He didn't protect Alina Habba. One, the plaintiffs didn't want to do that. They wanted to continue to go after Alina Habba. And two, Trump didn't want to pay enough in order to protect his, whatever she is, girlfriend, lawyer, whatever she's supposed to be. So he got out of the case, but he left Alina Habba high and dry. And in the case, and they took the position, the Trump people, the Bedminster people took the position that whatever that woman said, Alina Habba, we're not bound by that. We're not vicariously liable for that. That's the concept in the law. She's not an agent of ours. I don't know what she was doing. So Alina Habba was thrown under the bus. And of course, the judge was just sitting there going, go on, tell me more. So she had to settle this case. So now there's a settlement about what effectively is the first hush money case that Alina Habba handled, right? Not the first one for Donald Trump, but the first one for Alina Habba, which was her launching pad to get into the orbit of Donald Trump. It's also going to be her undoing. You showed a clip earlier about her bragging on some friendly debate stage or friendly stage where she was strutting the stage like she was in some sort of weirdo TED Talk, in which she was bragging about a federal judge. I don't care who appointed him. A federal judge in Florida, Judge Middlebrooks, after sitting around and looking at this BS lawsuit for a year, in which Donald Trump sued Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, and everybody else, John Podesta, and everybody else you could think of, including Congress people, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And the judge said this was a political screed and rant and vendetta and hit list masquerading as a lawsuit. And I'm going to sanction you for over $1 million for under the various rules and powers of a federal judge for a meritless bad faith filing. That in our world is a really bad thing that she's going to have to disclose on her this is Alina Habba, on her malpractice application for insurance, if she can get it, if she ever applies for admission to any other bar or in any court. She never, let me just make this last point. Alina Habba was who never was a effective or successful trial lawyer or litigator. Like I said, she did small time law in this office and defrauding Alice Bianco to settle a sex harassment case should not have put her in the lead chair to try some of the most important criminal and civil matters for Donald Trump. And yet it did. It shows you the lack of judgment and character by Donald Trump, that this is who he has in his inner circle. She settled the case, but she can't settle the ethics charge. And now I'm sure you and I'm going to keep an eye on it. Judge Ray is going to make that referral. When the media contacted the New Jersey bar and the grievance committee and said, do you have an active open file against Alina Habba? They said what they always say. we cannot comment on any active investigation we may or may not be conducting. Read that to mean they have opened up an active investigation against Alina Habba, and she's I think she holds 2 bar licenses from what I can see, New Jersey and New York. If she loses her New Jersey license or it gets suspended or reprimanded, she will also have a problem with her New York license, which I think is why she's slowly been trying to move over and get out of the world of being a lawyer and just be whatever she is for Donald Trump.
And then we're going to hear her whine and say, oh, they're coming after me. All of the liberal New Jersey leaders, even though I said New Jersey's actually a red state for the past year, all of the liberal New Jersey people, the state bar is weaponized against me because I allegedly groomed this client or pretended this person was a client of mine and engaged in the most unethical, egregious behavior where, frankly, any other lawyer would have been disbarred already. Let's be clear. Like, if that conduct existed with any other lawyer, they would have their license suspended 6 months ago. So they get passes and then they're going to whine about it. All right, let's talk about New York, Georgia, what's going on in these various cases. A lot of developments there. New York, back-to-back losses against Donald Trump. With Georgia, though, there was a slight victory, I guess. The main charges still stick against Donald Trump. In New York, the highest court, which in New York is called their Court of Appeals, at the state court level, the Supreme Court is their trial court. They just try to make it confusing. Trial court, Supreme Court, and then they have the appellate divisions, then the Court of Appeals in New York, and your state court system is the highest. And then you have the federal courts in New York, and then the Second Circuit Court of Appeals oversees the New York federal courts in some other states as well. But the New York affirmed the gag order against Donald Trump. He loses there. And then the Second Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Donald Trump's efforts to stay or stall the Manhattan District Attorney criminal case where he was convicted, where sentencing is scheduled in November, and they were citing Justice Merchan's ruling. Then you go to Georgia, where you have Scott McAfee buying some of Donald Trump's arguments on the grounds, though, of the supremacy clause, where essentially saying not that there is no remedy, but the remedy is what Jack Smith is doing, not what state prosecutors should be doing. Nonetheless, the big state charges against Donald Trump are still sticking, and he's going to be tried in Georgia. So it's not like a win-win, but certain of the charges got dismissed. But it's the context of supremacy clause. Those should be federal, and they are. And Jack Smith is briefing that. And there was a whole briefing schedule over the next month and a half that we talked about in the past Legal AF that will go before Judge Chutkan. Break it all down, Popok, for us, if you can. All three.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do it relatively efficiently. In New York, the gag order that has been in place, modified though by Judge Merchan in the 34 felony count conviction. Donald Trump's been trying to get rid of that gag order, arguing First Amendment protected presidential campaign speech, which is not a thing, by the way. Get rid of the gag order. I already got convicted. Well, what's left to be done? Well, he hasn't been sentenced yet. That's one. Now, the judge did modify it. He originally imposed it where he didn't want Donald Trump to go after any anticipated foreseeable witness or family members of the Manhattan DA or the judge or staff and that kind of thing. But he modified it. And after the conviction happened, he's like, well, we know who the witnesses are. And they were all against you. So if you want to comment about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, go ahead. Although that seems to have been, Donald Trump has gotten fatigued about that. You don't hear much about either of those two people on the quote unquote campaign trail, because I just think that just brings up what you started this podcast tonight with, which is, the felon, the prosecutor versus the felon or the predator. So the modified gag order has been in place, and I did a hot take on this. And Donald Trump's got a number of problems as an unwell man who's in shambles and circling the drain financially, morally, and otherwise, and mentally. But his other problem is he's got all these different venues and arenas where the positions he's taking are not consistent. He wants to say things out loud in his defense in order to try to win over the hearts and minds of some remaining voters. But those very same statements, which often verge on racist, misogynist, violent rhetoric, that is inconsistent with the positions his lawyers are taking or he's taken in the courtroom, like interviews where he says, or debates where he says, no, I never conceded that I lost the election. No, that was a sarcasm. All these stupid things that prosecutors and their teams are just waiting to scrape all of these comments and interviews and debates and use it against him, and at these trials. Something else that can be used against him is in his sentencing. He's not out of the woods yet. He's going to get sentenced the 26th of November by Judge Merchan. And everything that he's done and said before trial, during trial, and after trial, right up until the moment of being sentenced, is fair game for the judge to use and evaluate, including these statements that he's making, and his failure to accept responsibility, his failure to show any contrition whatsoever. So why he wants to be let out from under the gag order, I have no idea. It would be much better for him and much wiser for him if he stood in front of his adoring audience, as small as it is, at these rallies, and just said, I'd love to talk about the New York, but we have it up on appeal and I have a gag order, so I can't talk about it, and let him boo, but don't say anything. So they tried, and the judge said no. And then they took it up to over the summer, they took it up to the First Department Appellate Division in Manhattan, which is the first stop on the appellate train. And they said no. They also said no, saying there's no constitutional question that you're raising. There's no substantial constitutional issue in play. Denied. He didn't like that loss. So he took it up to the highest court, the Court of Appeals, and they rejected it on the exact same grounds. The gag order stays in place. No substantial constitutional question. This whole First Amendment presidential speech thing, we don't know what you're talking about. You're not allowed to undermine the integrity of the very criminal justice system that you just got convicted under. He's no longer, I got wrongfully indicted. As Judge Merchan put it in a recent order, this is now a unanimously convicted felon, okay, who has continued rights, but there's no more presumption of innocence. He's been convicted 12-0 by a fair and impartial jury. Donald Trump is continuing to try to drag the case before sentencing to federal court, thinking if he can get a federal judge to listen to some of his bullshit defenses post-conviction and pre-sentencing, that it will somehow change the result, that Merchan won't sentence him, maybe a federal judge would sentence him, and then he'd be able to go through the federal appellate process that you outlined and then get over to the United States Supreme Court, because he's got to jump the tracks and hijack the case and bring it over to feds in order to get to the Supreme Court. Well, as we said before smartly about Judge Merchan, he blocked the exit for going to a federal court and or to the U.S. Supreme Court before he sentences, and certainly before the election. Because he said, well, I'm not going to rule on the immunity decision in your state case. So you're not going to be able to take an appeal or argue anything. And since he didn't do that and he postponed on his own the sentencing, the federal appellate court, the Second Circuit, which is the highest court in New York at the appellate level, said, yeah, you don't need an emergency stay of anything related to your attempts to take the case to federal court, because the state court judge gave you an extension of time. So that's denied. Doesn't mean the issue of whether Donald Trump can take a federal appeal ultimately is resolved. It just means it's not going to get resolved before the November election, which is really what matters. And we're not going to talk about it at length today. Maybe I'll pick up with it with Karen on midweek, or maybe during a hot take. But Donald Trump's strategy in all of these criminal cases has been too smart by half, probably because he's guided by people like Alina Habba and Laura Loomer, instead of people like Jack Smith and all the great lawyers in the Manhattan DA's office. I mean, this is an unfair fight, okay? This isn't even cat and mouse. This is, I don't know what this is. He tried to delay the Chutkan case and in DC election interference case, and all he got was Judge Chutkan ordering and allowing the prosecutors to file not one, but two briefs with new evidence that they're going to be airing to the American people before the election. Great work, Donald. That was great. And then over here, he wanted to delay his sentencing in New York, and all that allowed Merchan to do is delay the immunity decision, which would have given him the appeal and the route to the Supreme Court. So another too smart by half moment by Donald Trump in his revolving door of brain trust. And I use that term lightly. Georgia, I mean, I know the reporting's been, it's going slightly better for him because the lawyers for Donald Trump say it is. Steve Sadow says, "Oh, we got to win." Okay, let's break it down. Two things happened in Georgia, three in the last week that I think are important. One, Fani Willis they're trying to drag Fani Willis, just like the U.S. Congress and MAGA try to drag Alvin Bragg and prosecutors before them for show theater in front of the American people about ongoing criminal investigations. So the Senate Republicans, state Senate Republicans in Georgia, want to drag Fani Willis, the DA in Fulton County, before them in a hearing, in order to ask her questions about the ongoing prosecution. And so she's filed a suit to quash the subpoenas, meaning so she won't have to appear. And that's going to be heard by some judge in Fulton County. All I know is it's not going to be heard by Judge McAfee, who's the judge presiding over the Trump case, because he recused himself and said, "No, I don't want to handle, the right or wrongs about Fani Willis any longer. I've got her as a prosecutor here in my case." So that happened. The next thing that happened is Judge McAfee got around a ruling on some motions to dismiss certain elements of the indictment, that long, sprawling indictment, 30, 40, 50 counts, whatever it ends up being. The heart of it is a racketeering influence and corrupt organization act count, a racketeering conspiracy that has many overt acts and additional predicate acts or crimes. Some defendants already got out of the case because they cooperated with Fani Willis. That left about 14 or so that are left, minus 2 or 3 of former lawyers for Donald Trump that took plea deals, including Ken Chesebro on one of the counts that just got dismissed, but he took the plea deal already. So they're out. So there's like 11 or 12 left. Donald Trump, of course, the lead person in all of that. But you also got like Mark Meadows there, John Eastman, and whatever. And one of the elements, when you and I looked and compared, because they came out almost simultaneously with a small gap, of Jack Smith's surgical 4-count indictment against Donald Trump, not for racketeering conspiracy, that yes, mentioned 5 unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators, but was really surgical and just like nailed Donald Trump. And these are the 30 things he did wrong. And this is the timeline in which he did it, kind of tracking the Jan 6 committee and its report. We compare that to Fani Willis, which had this gigantic, sprawling, speaking indictment, which moved across multiple states about Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania, and federal issues about the fake electors, sort of like what we already saw Jack Smith doing in the DC election interference case. And, the lawyers had a field day with saying, well, how does she have jurisdiction to go after some of these federal issues like the fake electors and the fake elector certificates? It's an element of, I don't want to say it's not an element of her conspiracy. And but there's still a lot of her case left. What Judge McAfee ruled in favor of Donald Trump is the fake elector counts, because they're federal based and under the constitutional supremacy clause, gotta go, because she doesn't have jurisdiction as a state prosecutor to cross over that boundary between state and federal law and jurisdiction and go grab issues, even if they're overt acts, or in this case counts in the indictment against Donald Trump. Jack Smith can. And even McAfee recognized that. Federal prosecutors, that's the world of federal prosecutors, and it is a part. The fake elector certificates are the heart of at least 2 of the counts in Jack Smith's DC election interference case for obstruction of an official proceeding. So it is a win. It is a winnowing down of this sprawling, speaking indictment to its core constituent parts. The reality is nobody's getting out. Everybody's staying in because they were also indicted for other things and other conspiracies that didn't have anything to do with the fake elector certificates. I think maybe one is out completely. And then lastly, a side note, Burt Jones, who's the current lieutenant governor of Georgia, who is also a fake elector. And I think there were 8 or 9 of them, most of which have cooperated with Fani Willis. He has been fighting it left and right. And Fani Willis got removed from the Burt Jones prosecution early on in the case by Judge McBurney, who was the chief judge at the time in Georgia, because she held a fundraiser for an opponent of Burt Jones, who was a Democrat. Probably shouldn't have done it. And the judge says, you probably shouldn't have done it, and I'm going to take you off the case. He referred it over. The Georgia Prosecutors Council, which is like this body of prosecutors around the state, they assigned the case, I think, to the person who chairs that committee. And that prosecutor, after a year and a half of looking at it, finally decided that Burt Jones, because he was a fake elector, even though he was a fake elector, he thought he was an elector for Donald Trump under certain circumstances. So there's no criminal intent. So he's not even going to bring an indictment against Burt Jones. So Burt Jones is out. And I think it's sort of tied into the same philosophy that McAfee used about the fake elector issue being a state court and or criminal issue. But that's the update. You know, Georgia was sort of dormant for a long time, and there's issues about Fani Willis being removed from the case that are still up on appeal that has not yet been heard. And that happens in later September. But that's sort of where we are in a case, just to be clear, that was never going to trial before the November election, nor the inauguration. Even if everything went well, it was going to be a 2025 or 2026 event. But it's going to be further delayed now.
Michael Popak, you may have to go solo on our next Patreon partner and associate meeting, patreon.com/legalaf. Monday is the due date, so we will keep everybody posted if that is indeed the date that I will have my first kid, our baby girl. My wife and I will be headed out there, so it will be in your able hands, Michael Popak, to hold the meeting with everybody. But if you can really join it, I mean, to spend an hour with Michael Popak and ask him all of the questions that you may have, it's a great time. People have loved it. We'll do it sometime, or you'll do it sometime next week. I'm going to volunteer you for it. Patreon.com/legalaf, Patreon.com, or do it in the next 2 weeks. But we got to do it this month. Patreon.com/legalaf.
I got something I want to say about what you just said.
What's that?
I wasn't going to raise it because I wanted, it's a private thing, and I wasn't sure what you wanted to say. I am so honored to have you and Sochi as friends. We've been doing this journey together. We're doing this particular journey together, and you and I are both going to be girl dads at or around the same time. And in a moment in history, we're about to, I'm in our own way, contribute to the election of the first female president in this country, or as my wife's T-shirt says, it's about Madam Time. And the fact that I think it's so much synchronicity and serendipity and lovely that you and I are both going to be raising strong women, coming from strong women, to be the next round of president. And I'm just so honored to always be with you here on this network and with your brothers and all the other contributors.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and the Legal AF family is all part of this together. We've taken this journey together. We're growing together. So to all the Legal AFers out there, thank you so much for sharing this show, letting people know about what we do here. This has become our life's work, and it's an honor to share our life's work with you. We both pivoted to this, and it's a surprise in our career trajectories that we'd wind up here, but frankly couldn't be happier and wouldn't want to be anywhere else than spending these weekends with you, and frankly throughout the week with the various hot takes. And we get to see a lot of people's faces at patreon.com/legalaf, so it's great. But even if we don't get to see your faces there, we know you're here. We feel your presence and this community's presence as it continues to grow and support our democracy. And as we see our politics here, and frankly, our American culture taking on the language of compassion, supporting each other, pro-democracy, the types of things we talk about here all of the time, lifting people up, not punching down, making politics more about that. It's an honor to spread those values and principles with each and every one of you. We'll see you next time on Legal AF, and we'll see you at patreon.com/legalaf. Again, shout out to our sponsors. A lot of sponsors this episode, but they really, really do help. And the discount codes are in the description below. And we spend a lot of time checking those sponsors out before and do our best to use the products and vet them. And I think you'll like them too. So check them out. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Shout out to the Legal AFers. Shout out to the Midas Mighty. And have a good one, everybody.